In this video, we're going to talk about many different ways to create selections and then how you can refine selections. First, let's look at this picture of the soldier, and we're going to go up to our very first selection tool, which is the marquee tool. You have a rectangular marquee tool, you have a circular or elliptical, and then you have ones that do a single row of a selection. We've seen a lot with the rectangular tool at this point, so let's look at the elliptical. Now, there are a lot of keyboard shortcuts that can be helpful to use for this. One that most commonly we talk about is using the Shift key. If I hold down the Shift key while making a selection, it will keep that shape or that selection in perfect proportion. So this is a perfect circle. If I let go of Shift, you'll see is I can use this to make any type of oval shape I want. Something else you can use is the space bar. If I hold down the space bar, it stops sizing it and allows me to move it around. And if I let go of space, it goes back to shaping it, okay? And you can do that as many times as you want until you let go of the mouse. That's the most important part when you're changing these, is that you keep the mouse button held down. So what we're going to do first is I want to make a circular selection around this piece of metal on the top of his helmet. I think it's a little too shiny, so we want to kind of bring it down and bring the highlights down. So we'll try to make a perfect circle by holding Shift, and then the trick we said to hold down the space bar to move it, and keep playing with it until you get it right. So right about there we have the whole thing selected. Now with this, and I'll zoom in so you can see better. Now once we have this selected, we can create an adjustment that affects only this area. So we'll go into adjustments, we'll look at the shadows and highlights, and we'll use this to bring down some of the highlights on this piece, just so it's not quite so shiny. Press OK. Now I can deselect, zoom back out, and we can see that is much duller and less of a shiny object. Okay. So another one we can use is the lasso tool. This one is when you want to select an area but not be perfect about it. So in another video, what we did was use the lasso tool to select this area on the background in this board so that we could create a content-aware fill. So what we could do is just sort of go around it in a quick way, just so we encompass the entire shape, but it doesn't have to be exact around the edges. Something like that. Once you hold down the mouse the whole time, you let go and it closes the selection. While we're on this, let's talk about refining the edge of a selection. If you go up to the options bar, you will see a button called Refine Edge. If you click on this, we get a bunch of options that allow us to change our selection. The radius, smooth, feather, contrast, and shifting the edge. So the edge will actually change the spot of your selection. The feather will create more of a fade around the outside of your selection. And the smooth will smooth it out. Contrast will make sort of a sharper edge to it. Same options that you'll find when refining a mask. This is just refining the selection before you do anything with it. Okay. Let's look at another one. Under the lasso tool, you will find the polygonal lasso tool, which goes in more of a shape, and the magnetic lasso. Magnetic lasso is pretty neat. It allows you to outline something similar to the lasso tool, but it will snap to any edges that it finds. So you see those points dropping down. That's not me. I'm dragging around slowly, and Photoshop is pretty intelligently trying to find the edges around this piece. Okay? You have to double click to close the selection. And you see it got pretty close. This is when you might use Refine the Edge to make it perfect. Okay. We also have the quick selection tool, which is a great one to use. This is sort of like, works like a paintbrush. So what you want to do is you can either just click one at a time, or you can click and hold and sort of push the selection around. Okay. And now you see if I go too far, what you can do is hold down the Alt key, and this will turn into a subtraction, and then you can subtract your selection out by pushing it back around. And similar to the magnetic lasso, it is magnetic as it snaps to edges that we see. We also have the magnetic wand. the magic wand. The magic wand will select things based on similar color and based on the tolerance that you tell it to do. So up at the top, you'll find the tolerance number. The higher this number is, the more sensitive it is to a selection, and it will select a larger area of that color. The lower the tolerance, it'll only select a small portion of it. It is defaulted to around 32 or 35. So with this, I can click up in a blue box, and it'll just select that blue where it stopped by the gray areas around it. Okay? This works best when you have a high contrast. If I tried to use this on his jacket, there are too many grays and greens and tans that if I click on this, it doesn't really quite get what I want. There's too much blending between the different things. One last thing I want to do is show you how to transform a selection. Let's say I use the quick selection tool and I want to try to just get his face. So I'm going to use this to go around, and we can see that I got most of it, but maybe I want to make the selection bigger or smaller. Instead of refining the edge of the selection, I can right click, choose transform selection. What this does, it'll act as the same as a free transform on an object. You have the handles around the outside, and what you can do is move it out or move it in, and you see it'll take your same shape and just transform it to something else. You can also move it around and change this however you want. You can even rotate it. And just like your free transform, if you want to accept it, you press enter, and if you want to reject the changes, you can just press escape, and it'll snap back to the way it was before you did the transform. So this is really everything you need to know about selections in Photoshop CS6.